Well, good morning, folks. Well, as you can see, what we're going to be getting into this morning is further evidence of what the other speakers have been talking about. There's been a mystical revolution over the last 40 years, and this mystical revolution has been fundamentally anti-Christian in its nature. And you can actually see evidence of this at the Owl Cafe. How many of you have ever been to the Owl Cafe? Okay. I was eating breakfast there this morning. It's right next to the motel. And as I was leaving, they had a bunch of magazines as you were going out the door, and one of them was a New Age magazine, Epic. And it stands for Empowering People, Inspiring Community. And on the cover was a symbol of the crown chakra, which Carol was talking about last night. And in the lobby of the Ramada Inn, where we're all staying, was another New Age magazine, Truly Alive, and on the cover there's a picture of one of the top New Age leaders in the country, Larry Doty, I think his name is. So, in looking through these two publications, I could tell that the New Age was very alive and well in this area. In fact, in the back, this one here, in the back they have as you can see, they have quite a few local New Age therapists and practitioners. So it became apparent that this area here, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, is a stronghold of New Age spirituality. But what we're going to look at is this mystical revolution has impacted the entire country to a very large degree. Christian writer Terry Mattingly said, this is 20 years ago, he said, the New Age didn't crest in popularity and then disappear, it soaked into society. And that's what we're going to see this morning, is how it is soaked into society. A lot of people believe, especially those of you who were adults in the 1980s, you probably heard about Shirley MacLaine and crystals, things like that, and then probably you didn't hear that term New Age anymore. Well, that's because they stopped using that term. You know, it became too controversial, so they just changed the name to spirituality. Okay, now I'm going to show you evidence that it did soak in. I mean, I could be lying. I could just be some kind of rabble-rouser that, you know, why believe me? Well, rest assured, there is evidence that the New Age has become a major component in American society. This is a book called The Making of the New Spirituality by a college professor named James Herrick. Is there any distortion or anything, or am I okay? Okay. Anyhow, The Making of the New Spirituality, by the way, for those of you that are really interested in this subject, I would recommend you get this book, because this book is very scholarly and very in-depth. I mean, this guy is telling the truth. And Dr. Herrick says that the revealed word tradition, that's us, the revealed word tradition is the Bible, that is Christianity, is being slowly dismantled in society and being replaced by the new religious synthesis, which is the New Age. You know, it's being done very slowly, but it is being done. Now, how many of you have heard anybody say that they were spiritual but not religious? Okay, there's actually a book on that. It's called Spiritual, Not Religious. And again, it's by a college professor, Robert C. Fuller. Again, a very scholarly book. You know, we're not dealing with conspiracy theories here. These guys know what they're talking about. And he says that according to Fuller's book, huge numbers of Americans have embraced what he refers to as unchurched spirituality, which is in effect New Age spirituality. So if somebody says they're spiritual but not religious, that means they haven't, you know, they don't like Christianity, they like these alternative spiritualities. Now, the word Veda is the Hindu word for what we would call the Bible. The Vedas are the Hindu scriptures. And this book is called American Veda. The guy's name is Philip Goldberg. And he documents very thoroughly how Hindu mysticism has become pervasive in American society. And he says Hindu mysticism has profoundly affected the worldview of millions millions of Americans and radically altered the religious landscape. And that's what Carol Matriciana was talking about last night, that the religious landscape now is not what it was some decades ago. Okay, this is written by a writer for the New York Times newspaper. It's called Bad Religion, and he says, again, this is all happening, it's happening in one sense very fast, but it's also happening in one sense where people don't really know the change is going on. And he says the slow motion collapse of traditional faith, that's again the revealed word tradition, and the rise of a variety of pseudo-Christianities, that means false Christianities, that stroke our egos, indulge our follies, and encourage our worst impulses. So again, there's documentation by valid authors that what I'm going to show you today is actually happening. It's not just conjecture. Okay, Baylor University, Baptist University in Texas, did a survey in 2007, and according to that survey, up to 26 million Americans view God as a cosmic force rather than a personal being. You know, kind of like in Star Wars, God is not a personal God. God is this energy or force that's in all things. Now you might say, well, 26 million, you know, that's not a whole lot. But that's just adults. And let me show you something that you may find quite interesting. Okay, that would be more adherents than Episcopalians, Lutherans, Presbyterians, United Methodists, and Seventh-day Adventists combined. Now, those are all major denominations. You know, when you think of Methodist and Presbyterian, you think of a big chunk of the population. But 26 million adherents to this God as cosmic force is more than all those combined. And these used to be the mainline denominations. And you can see that how many of you are in the business world? Okay, you know the law of supply and demand, right? Supply and demand is, if there's a big supply of something, that means there's a big demand. Well, this is Borders Bookstore before it went out of business. This is my hometown here. And there were 65 shelves devoted to New Age spirituality. 65 shelves. Okay, it started there, all those shelves, and then all those shelves on the other side of the aisle. And then it kind of snaked around the other side. And we're talking about hardcore occultism. We're talking about hardcore type stuff like Wicca and psychic powers and astral travel and things like that. And what makes this ironic is that all the major New Age authors were not in that section. They were in the self-help section. That's where you found the ones that sold in the tens of millions. So, you know, when you see something like this, you know something's going on. You know there's a paradigm shift. Okay, this is interesting. Ironically, it was a Calvary chapel pastor in Germany who sent me these pictures. He went to St. Petersburg, Russia. You know, it used to be Leningrad. And he was in a bookstore, and this is the New Age section in this bookstore in St. Petersburg. So even in Russia, you know, we got the same kind of phenomenon going on. This is going on all over the world. You know, mainly what I'm showing you today is the United States, but as you can see there, it's all in Russian, but see the Buddha there? The one with the blue cover? So even in Russia, there's an enormous interest in New Age spirituality. Okay, here's something quite interesting. The rise of Wicca. You all know what Wicca is, right? You've heard of it, modern-day witchcraft. Well, modern-day Wicca was started by the gentleman on the right there, Gerald Gardner. He was actually an Englishman. He worked for the British Civil Service in Malaya. Now it's called Malaysia, but then it was called Malaya. And witchcraft had almost completely died out in the Western world. So he kind of concocted what he thought was traditional witchcraft, and he called it Wicca, which means, you know, bending. That's where we get the word wicker from. You kind of bend and shape things to your own desires using supernatural powers. Like, remember that show, Bewitched? Remember she kind of wiggle her nose and stuff had happened, right? Well, even though that was a sitcom and kind of a, you know, it was portraying what witches actually do, they make things happen according to what they want, but it's through supernatural power. You know, you don't wiggle your nose, but anyhow, Gerald Gardner wrote that book, Witchcraft Today, in the 1950s, and just before the counterculture, and the counterculture, was looking for alternative spirituality, so they grabbed onto it, and the movement began, in the late 60s with, I hate to use this word, but the hippie movement, That was kind of a slang term, but, people in the counterculture, they were reading books like this, and then it gradually grew and grew. And what I'm about to show you is how much it's grown. Okay, in 1997, a Wiccan website came online devoted strictly to, how to be a witch, the practice of witchcraft. And it's called The Witch's Voice. And they have 130 web pages on basically the practice of witchcraft. So I'm going to show you how many hits they've got. I was going to ask you, how many hits do you think they've gotten since 97? Some person said 3 million. Do you think that's a lot, 3 million? Well, I'm going to show you how many hits they've gotten. 480 million, nearly 500 million hits. And that is you can see the pentagram there, that's off their website. 480 million hits since 1997. They're getting 500,000 hits a week. So Wicca has grown from nothing, when Gerald Gardner started it, to this major. Of course, I'm not saying there's 480 million witches, but there's probably 20, 25 million, something like that. And that's in the English-speaking world. That includes Great Britain, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, etc. But still, that shows that there has been, the point of this talk this morning is to show that there has been a mystical revolution. And of course, Wicca is a denomination in that mystical revolution, just one denomination. So Wicca has become so popular that the Complete Idiot's Guide to put out a book on it. See, mostly they put out books on, how to speak Spanish or French wine or things like that, golf, what have you. But they decided there was so much interest, they put out a book called Wicca and Witchcraft, 300 pages. And that became one of their top bestsellers. And another situation involved is that young girls seem to be really going for Wicca. Teenage girls at Barnes & Noble, there were 27 shelves devoted to something called teen paranormal romance. Teen paranormal romance, and of course it included vampires, included werewolves, but a lot of it had to do with witchcraft. There's a book, Once a Witch. There's another book, Witch Child. So in other words, there seems to be a targeting of young teenage girls. So what exactly is mysticism? That's kind of a vague term, kind of a nebulous term. Well, according to the WebsterDictionary.com, it is the belief that direct knowledge of God, spiritual truth, or ultimate reality can be attained through subjective experience. In other words, mysticism is when you got supernatural things going on. It's not intellectual. It's not like you just read something or just kind of think something. It's like some entity shows up in front of you, or you go into altered states of consciousness. And that is the very essence of mysticism, the practice of meditation. There really it was Johanna that quoted, all occult work is based on the changing of consciousness. You have to change your consciousness. See, the word occult means hidden. How many of you know what the word occult means? It's from the Latin word occultus, and it means hidden or kept secret. In other words, there's this realm that's hidden that nobody knows, and you have to access that realm, and this is how you do it, through changing your consciousness. Well, this isn't the type of meditation that we all engage in every day. I mean, all humans meditate on things every day. When the Bible talks about meditation, it talks about thinking about things, deeply. But this type of meditation is the exact opposite. This type of meditation has to do with switching off the mind or stopping the flow of thoughts. And there's 3 basic ways of doing it. The most common one, especially in yoga, is reciting a mantra. The word mantra means to be liberated from thought. That means you get rid of your thinking process and you empty your mind through repetition. Another one is focusing on the breath. And that's one we're going to be looking at here really soon. That's called Zen Buddhism. And the last one is percussion sounds, like drumming, like in shamanic type activities. Okay, this is from my book, but these are from New Age sources. I took those from New Age authors. Okay, meditation is the doorway between worlds, the pathway between dimensions. So in other words, we're not talking about just people believing things. We're talking about people accessing other dimensions, and that's what I said the word occult meant, hidden or kept secret. So there's this realm nobody knows about, but you can go into that realm if you know the right methods. Meditation is the key, the indispensable key to the highest states of awareness. You probably, you've been hearing about various people say that, people in the New Age think they're God, right? And how many of you are thinking, how can they believe they're God, right? How many of you have thought that this is really dumb? How can people think that they're God? Well, this is how. I want you to pay attention here. Like Charles Stanley says, listen to me now. Now listen to me. This is why they think they're God. They don't think they're God. They have the experience of being God. So you engage in this meditation practice. You use mantras or whatever. And this is not me saying this. This is from a woman. This is in my book, but it's a woman talking about doing meditation. She says, one starts by silencing the mind. For many, this is not easy. But when the mind, okay, you listening? When the mind has become silent and still, it is then possible for the divine force to descend and enter into the receptive individual. First it trickles, and later it comes in waves. And I believe that most of us here would agree that is what the Bible calls a familiar spirit, or demonic spirit. So in essence, you engage in these emptying the mind practices, and then you open yourself up, and a familiar spirit comes in and impersonates God, and starts to tell you that you're God. Okay, the meditation explosion. This is Time Magazine, 2003, The Science of Meditation. New Age mumbo jumbo, not for millions of Americans who meditate for health and well-being. This seems to be the avenue that most people who've got into the New Age have taken. They started meditation not because they wanted to be New Agers, but because they wanted some health reason or some kind of stress reduction. How many have heard the term mindfulness? Oh, quite a few. Yeah, mindfulness. This is very important here. This mindfulness revolution is now sweeping the country. For those of you who are younger, under age 30 or so, there's no doubt in my mind that you are going to be encountering this somewhere in the upcoming years. There's no doubt, because it is impacting the world of psychological counseling, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, health field, sports and fitness, and business and success training. When you go to the self-help section or business section and look at books on how to improve your life, as we'll see here pretty soon, mindfulness has become very central. So mindfulness is Zen Buddhist meditation. It's focusing on your breath to stop the flow of thought. It comes from the Eightfold Path in Buddhism. Right mindfulness is the term, but it has nothing to do with, remember your mother would say, now be mindful, not to do this or that. So it has nothing to do with being, aware of a certain behavior. It's emptying the mind. And we have, you can't really, that one on the left there is Time Magazine. And you can't really see it is Time, that's strange. But anyhow, Time Magazine has documented the mindful revolution, and the book, or the magazine on the right there, is actually a magazine devoted to this type of practice. And it says a healthy mind, healthy life. So the people that are drawn to this through, the lure of happier, healthier, lifestyles. Okay, here we have a corporate mindfulness training. This is General Mills. I don't know where they're located, I think in Michigan, but these are employees at General Mills doing Buddhist meditation, at the behest of their corporation, because it supposedly will make them better employees. Okay, this book is on the New York Times bestseller list. It's called Thrive, and it's written by Arianna Huffington. Now, she was the co-founder of the Huffington Post. And she says that if you really want to thrive in this world, if you really want to be happy and thrive, you have to incorporate Buddhist meditation into your lifestyle. And in this book, she says that institutions and organizations all over the world are now incorporating Buddhist meditation into their procedures for like I said, creativity, counseling, stress reduction, what have you. So what we're talking about is not cults. We're not talking about cults. We're talking about, all the elements that make up society becoming cults, in the spiritual sense. Like you go to work for General Mills, and they'll have you doing Buddhist meditation, and it could be that way at any company, any place. This is, how many recognize this guy? Okay, this is Dan Harris. He's the anchor on ABC News of Nightline, and he's also the anchor, I think, on the Sunday evening news, right? ABC Sunday evening news. Well, he got into mindfulness meditation, and at first, before that, he was very skeptical. He was like your typical person. He thought, this is a bunch of New Age mumbo-jumbo. I'd never do this, but he got into it, and he started doing it, and he got, spirituality, and he wrote this book, 10% Happier. And in it, he says that even Diane Sawyer is open to doing this type of meditation. He says that Diane Sawyer is the most skeptical person in the world. I mean, nobody could con her. Nobody could take her in. But she's even open to doing Buddhist meditation. Now, it gets downright weird. This is a book on chia seeds. If you eat chia seeds, you'll be healthier. You'll have plenty of fiber. It's called Chia Vitality. And it has a whole chapter on mindfulness meditation. So what does Buddhist meditation have to do with chia seeds? In it says you'll have a more meaningful life if you do mindfulness meditation. Like I said, this is sweeping through everything. If you haven't already, you will encounter this, or someone, in your family. Okay, is this revolution spiritually benign? In other words, this is being done, those people doing meditation for stress reduction or whatever, is that okay, or is that something wrong with that? Well, obviously, from my perspective, it's not good, and this is why. Remember last night, Joanna and Carol were talking about mediumship. Remember that? Mediums? Now, a medium is somebody who has a familiar spirit. Medium is somebody who's connected to a spirit guide. And I want you to pay close attention to this now. This is a book called The Beginner's Guide to Mediumship, and you can see like spirits of the dead are around her there. Those are like ghosts or spirits. And in this book, it says, meditation is the key to unlocking the door of mediumship, for without meditation, there is no mediumship. A total and deep trance occurs when the mind is completely blank, when mind chatter has been overridden by the mantra or by your breath. If you continue the flow of uninterrupted trance, spirit contact and visions can occur. And I'm telling you, they do occur. So those people that were doing mindfulness meditation for secular reasons were in effect opening themselves up to familiar spirits, because the meditation here in this book is exactly the same as all New Age meditation. As it says here, the key to mediumship is when the mind is completely blank. Okay, New Age pundit Ken Wilber. Ken Wilber is one of the intellectuals of the New Age movement. He's one of the top people that is highly respected, and he says, if you're doing meditation correctly, you're in for some very rough and frightening times. Meditation as a relaxation response is a joke. Well, what does he mean by rough and frightening times? Why would meditating cause you to have rough and frightening times? Well, another writer said, when a meditator is led to expect stress reduction and instead comes face to face with his true self, that would be a spirit guide, the result can be anything but relaxing. And see, that true self thing, that he's a New Ager, and he's saying, your true self is your God self, but in essence, your true self is a demonic spirit from our perspective. But he would say, no, that's your divine self. See, these people, like I said, these people that believe they're God, they've actually connected with something. They're actually under the control of something. It's not just intellectual. And this more or less makes my point than anything else. This was from Time magazine, 1996, 18 years ago. This Marty Kaplan was a Jewish secular screenwriter in Hollywood. Didn't have a religious bone in his body, and he had a habit of biting his fingernails. He was always biting his fingernails, so he went to his doctor, and his doctor said, you need to meditate, probably mindful meditation, because it's been around for 30 years, but only recently has it taken off. So he started doing it. And by the way, that Ambush by Spirituality, that was the title of his article in Time magazine. I didn't make that up. I didn't put that there. So he started doing it. He says, I got more from mind-body medicine than I bargained for. I got religion. You don't have to believe in anything. All you have to do is do it. Unwittingly, now I want you to remember this, unwittingly, he didn't know what he was actually doing. Unwittingly, I was engaging in a practice that had been at the heart of religious mysticism for millenniums or thousands of years. It is known to every mystic tradition, and later on in the article, for the sake of time, he talks about, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Warren mentioned him, the father of New Age, that he mentioned that we are evolving, that all of humanity is evolving into this higher species, the Homo Christus, the Christ consciousness. Okay, yoga, this could prove to be very, very controversial because a lot of people think that yoga is nothing more than stretching and, health and fitness, and, why are you against that? Are you prejudiced against Indians or something? What's wrong here? Well, first of all, yoga has become immensely popular. 200, according to Om magazine, Om is a classic Hindu chant. According to Om magazine, a British yoga magazine based in London, it says there are 250 million people who practice yoga worldwide. And this is a recent phenomenon because a few decades ago, the only place you'd find yoga is in India, and then, only among a certain special caste or so. It wasn't something that was widespread even in India. But now 250, it started in the 90s. There was a yoga explosion in the early 90s. And it's going to keep going. This is why. This is a woman named Beth Shaw, and she owns a company called Yoga Fit. And according to her website, Yoga Fit has become the largest yoga school in North America and has trained some 200,000 instructors worldwide. 200,000, so that means not people to do it. It hasn't trained 200,000 practitioners, it's trained 200,000 instructors to teach people to do yoga. So that means if each one teaches 1,000 people, to do yoga, which is very possible in a year or two, that means 200 million people will learn yoga just through this one organization worldwide. Now, the person that helped me on my PowerPoint said, that is quite a lot. Yeah, he goes, that is quite a lot, My point is that these are not fads. 20 years from now, nobody's going, yeah, I remember when mindfulness, that was a buzzword, or this isn't like disco in the late 70s. This isn't like pet rocks. This isn't like hula hoops, Well, probably a lot of you don't know what hula hoops are, but... But this is not a fad because mysticism is a doorway. I mean, once mysticism gets a hold of people, it doesn't let go of you. You're actually absorbed into this realm. You actually move into this realm. Carol Matriciana said something to me here a few years ago that a lot of people say, well, are you saying that if I just go to a yoga class and just learn how to do some stretches, that I'm going to fall under the power of evil? Are you saying that? And she said something to me that really motivated me and really stuck with me. She said, when you go to a yoga class, you've entered a realm. Remember that? You've entered a realm. And that haunted me because I'm going to show you what it's all about now. This is Beth Shaw, that woman we just saw that's trained 200,000 instructors. You got to remember that, instructors. Yoga Fit, she says, the ancient practice of meditation is as integral to yoga as the poses are. Integral means necessary or vital. and they have the same intention, not to tune out, but to tune in to a frequency long forgotten or perhaps undiscovered. So yoga is about tuning into a frequency, and it's done through meditation. Meditation and yoga go together, or supposed to. And what does that frequency convey? That's the important question. What does that frequency say? This is a book called Yoga and the Quest for the True Self by Stephen Cope. And he says, we're all born divine. We are all born divine. This is the classic statement of the perennial philosophy of yoga. And that's the essence of yoga. We are all born divine. He goes on to say, what we are seeking is already at the core of our nature. We are already inherently perfect. So for those of you that have problems at work or family problems or, all sorts of problems, that shouldn't be, because we're all inherently perfect. If your boss is hard on you and gives you a bad time all the time, something's wrong, because your boss is inherently perfect or whatever. It means that God is available fully at each moment simply because God is our true nature. Now, we've been talking about the end of the age here and the Antichrist and all that. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, it says that he sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God, right? You all know about that, or most of you? Well, I believe this is how he's going to do it. This is how he's going to show himself to be God. There has to be an infrastructure. There has to be some way that he can show himself to be God that millions and millions and hundreds of millions of people will find convincing. If he just, said, I'm God, people, yeah, sure he is, But in this context, it makes sense to a lot of people. He's going to show himself to be God in the occultic sense. And this is brought out in the very word yoga. How many of you know what the word yoga means? Wow, hardly anybody. The word yoga means union. Union. In other words, you're linked or bound or yoked, or you have union with something. And that union is with Brahman, or the god of Hinduism. You have union with God. And that is why at the beginning and end of every yoga class, see, they got their hands together like that? The teacher will go, Namaste. And the students will go, Namaste. And that means the God in me bows down to the God in you. In essence, God is in every person. And that's why Carol, when she said, you have entered a realm in which God is in everybody. Now, you may be a Christian, but you just saw what yoga preaches, and that is the exact opposite of what Christianity preaches. That is the exact polar opposite. Okay, this is Alice Bailey. She was an occultist and a channeler in the 20th century. She actually came up with the term New Age, reference to the age of Aquarius. She talked about a coming one world religion, one world government. The world will be united in the age of Aquarius. And she said, the yogi, or the one who has achieved union, for yoga is the science of union, knows himself as he is in reality. He knows himself to be past all controversy, God. And I think that speaks for itself. Okay, Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was known as the wickedest man in the world back in the late 1800s and early mid-1900s. And he was about as occultic as you can get. He was like he made Anton LaVey look like the Easter Bunny. And he was into yoga. Here it says, Aleister Crowley, 8 lectures on yoga, the most scientific and informative work on yoga ever written. So doesn't he look like Hitler there? Kinda? I'm not saying he is, but he looks like him. So Aleister Crowley was an advocate of yoga. Okay, Borders. When Borders was around, I used to go just to, prove to people, this is very controversial. You probably have a lot of friends or relatives, family members, co-workers, who do yoga or whatever. And if you were to say anything bad about yoga, they'd say, you know, there's nothing wrong with yoga, you know, it's just exercise. Well, I used to go to Borders, and the yoga books were in the fitness section. You know, it was sports fitness section, along with running and tennis and things like that. And they'd have like 4 or 5 shelves devoted to yoga, and I'd look in each book. And of course, the vast majority of them had the connotation of fitness. And in virtually every one were Hindu spiritual references, in virtually every one of them. Of course, this was in the fitness section. And I'd open these books, and there'd be terms like chakras, kundalini, samadhi. And this is because you cannot separate the spiritual aspects of yoga from the physical aspects, because there are 8 limbs to yoga. The stretching part is only I think the 4th or 5th. They're called asanas. You know, you've seen the classic, you know, bending and all that. Those are called asanas. And those are like the 4th or 5th limb. But the final limb, the 8th limb, is called samadhi. And samadhi is when you have went into a trance, completely switched off your mind through the mantra. And now, supposedly, that opens up a way to connect or have union with God. And that God is the God of Hinduism, you know, the cosmic force. 26 million people. And it's got that way because of things like yoga and mindfulness. So, in essence, these books in the fitness section were basically promoting Hindu samadhi. So what is the source of samadhi? Okay, there we have the chakras. In most of these books, you can check it out for yourself. Go to some secular bookstore, find the books on yoga, and you'll find chakras. Carol talked about them last night, and she'll probably talk about them next. And there are these energy centers that are activated through, like I said, meditation. You know, you empty the mind, and pretty soon you feel this kundalini or serpent power surging up your spine, and as it surges up the spine, it activates these chakras, and when it hits the 6th one here, called the third eye, that has to do with psychic powers, but when it hits the 7th chakra, then you know that you're God, self-realization. And that's what this magazine here displays, is the 6th or the 7th chakra, you know, in the Owl Cafe there. So when you find out what the chakras are all about, then it really gets scary. There's a book called The Pocket Guide to Chakras. Okay, the 7th functions like a battery charger, renewing our connection with spirit. And by spirit, they mean spirit guides, because the next one says, there are beings on other planes are eager to communicate with you if you're willing to be receptive to them. If you're willing to be receptive to them. So yoga isn't about union with the God of the Bible, you know, Yahweh or Jesus Christ. Yoga is about union with beings on other planes. A 2012 study indicates that 8.7% of U.S. adults, or 20 million people, practice yoga. Okay, listen to this, folks. Of current non-practitioners, 44% of Americans call themselves aspirational yogis, people who are interested in trying yoga. So in essence, you know, 8-9% of the population is doing it now, but nearly half, 44%, are open to it. And that's why, you know, conferences like this are so important, because I think I made a good point here. I haven't twisted anything, pardon the pun. You know, I mean, this is true. I challenge anybody, if somebody gives you a hard time, say, go to, you know, a secular bookstore, go to the yoga section, you know, fitness, look at the books, and you'll find chakras, kundalini, samadhi, you know, things like that. And the chakras are, you know, especially are what you'll find there. And chakras are connected with spirit guides. And this is the first conference I've ever been at where I didn't talk about Reiki. How many of you have ever not heard about, how many of you have ever encountered Reiki? Okay, Reiki is another thing. That, I didn't have this in my PowerPoint because I wanted to emphasize the mindfulness, because that's really, really getting big. But Reiki is a New Age healing technique where they channel energy into you through their hands. There's others. There's healing touch. There's therapeutic touch. There's pranic healing, there's quantum touch, there's a reconnection. 65 different modalities based on the chakras where they channel energy into you. And again, this is connected with spirit guides. In Reiki literature, one Reiki master said, we all have the right to our spirit guides. We all have the right to connect with these beings on other planes. Okay, this is U.S. Catholic Magazine. This is one of the main Catholic magazines that are out there, very mainstream. And they did a thing on it called Spiritual Exercises. Can other religious practices strengthen your Catholic core? Well, in it says yes. The whole article says, yeah, if you practice yoga, you can become a better Catholic. And the reason is, well, just because Hindus do yoga doesn't mean we can't. Anybody can do yoga, regardless of what religion you are. And they call it, what they call it? Prayer yoga. Prayer yoga. And, of course, other denominations are involved with this. Other Christian denominations have absorbed Christian-type yoga practices. Okay, meditation for the masses. Now, how many of you are baby boomers? Oh, you're going to like this next section. You're going to find this. If you found everything before this boring, you're going to really like this. Well, I don't consider it boring, but... Okay, David Spangler, again, one of the intellectuals of the New Age movement, it said in the mid-60s, there weren't many places where such a vision was taken seriously or even considered. And by vision, the New Age vision, the meditation, man is God, that type of thing. But that started to change. Now, in this album, I had it myself, there was a song called Within You, Without You. See, George Harrison on the, what was the name of that? The Rubber Soul album, Norwegian Wood, had developed an interest in an Indian instrument called the sitar, and he had come into contact with a guy named Ravi Shankar. And Ravi Shankar, see, none of the Beatles were religious. I think they may have had Catholic backgrounds or something, but none of them were really religious. Well, Ravi Shankar started to evangelize George Harrison, and he wound up connecting with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. So he got into it, and he started writing songs with Hindu themes, and this was Within You, Without You. Try to realize it's all within yourself. Everything is within you. God is within. By the way, there's something else interesting here. See this guy right here? That's Aleister Crowley. That's Aleister Crowley. Why they put him up there, I don't really know, but that's him. Well, anyhow, the Beatles became disciples of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and put him on the map, and actually went to Marrakesh, India, to study under him at the TM Center there. Well, anyhow, Ringo Starr, he got bored and he left after just a few weeks. And there were rumors that the Maharishi was chasing Mia Farrow. He was after Mia Farrow. So John Lennon, he had been very promiscuous himself, and he thought, well, this guy's no better than I am. I thought he was some kind of a holy man. This guy's no better than I am. So he was storming out, and the Maharishi comes out and said, John, why are you leaving? And John Lennon says, well, if you're so cosmic, you'd know. No, by cosmic, he meant, well, if you're so attuned. See, the word Mahesh was his family name. The word Rishi is like a psychic. The word Rishi is like a psychic. So and Maha means great. So his title was Great Psychic Mahesh, who is a yogi. A yogi is somebody who's accomplished in yoga. So John Lennon was saying, well, if you're such a great psychic, you know why I'm leaving. Anyhow, probably every baby boomer's heard of the Woodstock Music Festival, right? Well, if you see, I don't know if you can see this, but this is very fascinating, considering the subject we're talking about. You see right here where it says an Aquarian exposition. You see that? An Aquarian exposition. Well, that's a reference to the age of Aquarius. So what is the age of Aquarius? What does astrology have to do with music? You know, what does New Age spirituality have to do with Santana? You know? Well, I'll show you. I don't know. How many of you have seen the movie Woodstock? Well, you might remember this. Okay, before any of the groups came out, before any music was played, there was a benediction. And that benediction was done by Swami Satchidananda. And here he is. He's in the middle there, and you see his disciples on both sides of him, you know, flanking he's up on a cushion or pedestal or something. And he's telling these 500,000 people that they shouldn't be taking LSD or smoking pot, that they should be meditating. What they needed was higher consciousness. They needed to, you know, throw away their lids and their acid tabs, and they needed to get into Hindu-style meditation. And many people believe this is where the counterculture started to really embrace New Age spirituality. And there we have a picture of Swami Satchidananda, and it's kind of hard to see, but all the scriptures, oh, you see the tiger there? All the scriptures tell us one thing: know thyself. If you have known yourself, you have known everything else. And that's, you know, yoga. You know, if you have union with the inner divinity, then you know everything else. But so anyhow, TM kind of died down 69, 70, 71. You know, still counterculture people were doing it, but, you know, the Beatles had jumped ship. In fact, that word, two things, that word fool on the hill, that song, Fool on the Hill, that was about the Maharishi. And the word, because Rikakesh, I said Marrakesh, that's a whole other group. Rikakesh is where his meditation center was, and it was on a hill. But anyhow, on the White Album, John Lennon had a song called Sexy Sadie, and in reality, when he first wrote it, it was Maharishi. And people told him he might get sued or whatever, so he changed it to Sexy Sadie, but the words are something to the effect, you've made a mess of everything, you know, really putting them down. But so the Beatles were disillusioned with the Maharishi, but in 1974, Merv Griffin, how many remember Merv Griffin? Merv Griffin became a follower of the Maharishi and actually had him on his... Merv Griffin was like the Oprah Winfrey of the 1970s, him and Phil Donahue. And the Maharishi was on there, I think, in 74. And after he was on, transcendental meditation literally exploded. It literally exploded amongst before that it was Birkenstock wearing, granola eating, tree hugging, types. But after that, every man and his third cousin started doing transcendental meditation. And that's when this mystical revolution really started to take off. And that's when you got, Silva Mind Control and Est, and in the 80s, Shirley MacLaine started writing her books, and then it just kind of snowballed in the 90s with the yoga explosion and Reiki, and, things are just mindfulness now, and just, we have had, there's no doubt, there is absolutely no doubt we have had a mystical revolution, right? Amen? I haven't blown anything out of proportion. So the thing is, what's the nature of this mystical revolution? Where does this view come from, originate? Romans 7:18, Paul says, I know nothing good dwells within me, that is in my flesh. There's nothing good that dwells within man. And you can see that just by life. People are always engaged in conflicts and things of that nature. People that raise kids, they know that it's a hassle, right? Okay, Psalm 39:5. Verily, every man in his best state, Warren. A lot of us, since we have the same message, We have the same message. It's very simple. You don't have to have a lot of different verses. It's just extremely simple. Barely man, that means truly, every man in his best state is altogether vanity. But here's where the view really comes from. Isaiah 14:14. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That is Lucifer saying that. Lucifer. I will be like the Most High. Anything that's of a supernatural nature that is, I will be like the Most High, is satanic. Like that remember that movie, The Exorcist? You got head spinning and vomit spewing and all this. Satan comes as an angel of light, and his ministers transform themselves as the ministers of righteousness. And that's what we're seeing here. The Maharishi, when he came out on Merv Griffin there, he didn't spew vomit. He said, you will have peace and tranquility if you try transcendental meditation. Okay, what it boils down to is the preaching of the cross versus the preaching of the higher self. That's basically what we're talking about this weekend. This weekend is the preaching of the cross versus the preaching of the higher self. Excuse me, Deepak Chopra, he's one of the major leaders in this movement, wrote a book called The Third Jesus. The first Jesus is the historical Jesus, the second Jesus is the Christian Jesus, and the third Jesus is the New Age Jesus. So we got three Jesuses to pick from here, And he says, if there is such a thing as God consciousness, no one can be excluded from it. So no matter how evil you are, no matter how cruel you are, no matter how wicked you are, you can never be excluded from being God. Morality has nothing to do with it. You can never be excluded because everyone has God consciousness. Romans 5:10, for if when we were enemies we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, much more being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. So in other words, the only thing that reconciles humanity to God is the preaching of the cross, the death of his Son, because this is I think a liberal Catholic theologian. I saw him his name is Dominic Crowson. I saw him on 60 Minutes. And he says, well, how can we have to have this crucifixion and stuff? Why can't God just say, I forgive you? That was his take. But I thought, well, if someone murdered his family, or stole stuff that was really valuable to him, and they took him before a judge, and the judge just says, well, I forgive you, you can go. How would he feel about that? He wouldn't like it, would he? So the essence of it is that there has to be a reason you're forgiven. There has to be a reason. There has to be a rationale. God just can't say, I forgive you, because there has to be there has to be justice. 1 Corinthians 1:18, for the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us which are saved is the power of God. And that's what we're defending here, ladies and gentlemen. We're defending the preaching of the cross versus this deception of familiar spirits. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. So in Christianity, you're not God, you're a son or daughter of God. You're a partaker of the divine nature, not a possessor of the divine nature. Now I want to leave you with this. I'm not doing this for shock value or, National Enquirer type dramatic effect. But the point I'm trying to get across is this mystical revolution involves the general population now. People that you think are really good people are starting to jump on the bandwagon. People that you admire and respect are starting to embrace things that, this is important, would never have been tolerated 20 years ago or more. Things are changing, and that's what I want to show you here. Things are indeed changing. So this is not something to stir up, ill will or, titillate or whatever. And actually, it's quite tragic. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Regard not, this is my battle cry here. Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defined by them. I am the Lord your God. Actually, people involved in this, mediums and Reiki channelers and things like that are indeed wizards. The Hebrew word there is a knowing one. A wizard is a knowing one, someone who has knowledge of supernatural realms. I was a slide short there. But anyhow, this person here, Rebecca Rosen, is a wizard. She is a full-fledged wizard, according to that verse, because she has familiar spirits. She is a knowing one. And she wrote this book, Awaken the Spirit Within. And this is, I didn't really dwell on this, but I dwelled on yoga and mindfulness, but the development of psychic powers is another one that's really exploding. These books here, these magazines are filled with people who are psychics, channelers, of that nature, people like Rebecca Rosen. And Rebecca Rosen wrote this book, Awaken the Spirit Within, and she says the unseen world are guides, or spirit guides, or familiar spirits, or demonic spirits, we would call them. Leviticus 19:31 calls them familiar spirits, are present with us every day, waiting for us to call on them to lovingly guide us along and wake up to who we truly are, God. They're just they're just waiting to lovingly guide us along to we are God. This slide here kind of sums up. I could just come up here once, show you this slide, and that would be it. That's all I need to do. Everything else is just kind of backing up this slide. So like I said, this is starting to become not just some kind of weirdo religion, not just something that is obscure. Your everyday person is starting to embrace this. And, this is Vanna White, and she endorsed that book. She says, this book is extremely inspirational and will free you if you are feeling stuck in any area of your life. It awakens the truth that we all have inside of us and will help you live a healthy, happy life filled with love. Thank you.